Recording in progress.
Perfect. Okay, great. So this session today is on becoming an effective leader. And really what this session will enable us to do, it'll enable us to think about how much time we actually spend leading and how much time we spend managing, because there is actually a difference between both. And when it comes to leading and managing, sometimes we use these terms, meaning the same thing, but there is differences. So that's what we're going to explore today. And I love this quote by John C. Maxwell. It says that leaders become great not because of their power, but because of their ability to empower others. And I think that's what great leadership really is. That encapsulates it perfectly. It's about how we empower others to be great. And that's what we can do through how we lead. So an effective leader really is someone who inspires, influences, and guides others towards achieving a shared goal. So we will all have goals that we want to achieve. Whenever you are able to lead effectively, then you can create that positive environment. You can empower everyone around you and have that empowering environment. And to do that, really, whenever we are leading, it's about combining vision with action. It's about communicating with connection. So really connecting with people when we communicate. And it's about confidence and compassion. So I think those words really sum up effective leadership. And, whenever we're thinking about great leaders, I always think it's great to think about who are the best leaders that you've ever had? Who do you admire and what made them great? And, if you think about that, who do you aspire to be? Well, all of people around us that have influenced how we lead and have made a big impact in our lives. So I want you to think about that question. Who has been the best leader you've ever had? And what components of their personality or how they delivered and led made them stand out and made you really warm to them? Maybe it was a bit of advice they gave you. Maybe it's how they treated you. Maybe it's things they said to you. Maybe it's because they believed in you and they gave you a promotion. They, give you more responsibility. They actually empowered you. So just think about that for a second and write down anyone that you can think of. Do you have anyone that made you feel like, really special and, what really made them great? I'll ask a couple of us to share maybe as well, just. So I suppose I'll share maybe first just to kick us off. So I suppose I've been lucky to work with lots of great leaders throughout my life, and both personally and professionally. I've had lots of people who inspire me, and I sort of try and take, elements of their different personalities. And I suppose just even thinking about my previous employment before I started my own business. The leader of that company, David Henderson, I often talk about David because he did inspire me. I worked very closely with David in Tobermory. He owns the company, and he was part of the senior leadership team along with me and some others. And David really, the reason I admired him because he was really, really driven, but he did it in a really humble, caring way, if that makes sense. So he cared about the people, he cared about the team. It was all about the people. He also did a lot of charity work really quietly in the background that he didn't know, like, to talk about much, or we had to sort of take it out of him, but he did that. But he also was about quality, he was about service, he was about how can we always do better. And he was very driven, he always was very visionary. So he did good in terms of people and the people that work with Tobermory, but he also did good beyond that. Around the globe, and also he cared a lot, but he was also had the other side where he was very driven and wanted to grow and very ambitious. So I admired that as well. So there's lots of traits that he had that I find, that I really emulate towards. So maybe ask just a couple of people to share. Catherine, if you don't mind, is there anybody that's influenced you or any great leaders that you've had over your career that you've admired?
I suppose that's kind of a hard one, Myra. Not There have been people that have influenced me over my career, yes, but nothing. I mean, it's a tough one actually, to be honest with you, for me. And I work with a lot of family too, so it's not necessarily really, strictly speaking, a normal work environment. So it isn't, I suppose, maybe for me. I can think of one of the directors who I work with who I've definitely learned an awful lot from, and he is a good leader. But and in my previous employment, I had a very good boss. But and it's this isn't maybe the right answer to say, but not really. Unfortunately, Myra, can I think of anybody that I could say has really massively inspired me? Not really.
Yeah, well, no, that's good too,
I'm
Catherine,
just
because again, it's just, this lesson will sort of help you think about the traits of a great leader.
yeah,
And I bet you there's people that you manage that really look up to you and, and have be inspired by you and how you lead as well, because I know I see you as a very warm leader and you
yeah.
always listen and you drive things forward. So thank you for that. I'm going to come to maybe Paul. Paul, have you anyone that you can think of that's inspired you? And it may be in a work environment, but sometimes we look to others outside of work. And I'll give you a couple of examples of that maybe later. Well, I'll tell you now. Somebody who's inspired me, I suppose, out of work is Kelly Holmes. Kelly Holmes, I think she's incredible. I see her as so resilient. She was attending an event in Belfast. It was a women in leadership event, and this was maybe a couple of years ago. And it was a day like this. There was snow, there was a storm. All flights were cancelled, and the flight that she was meant to be on to Belfast was cancelled. But she actually got a flight to Dublin and got a taxi from Dublin to the event in Belfast. And she ran in like an Olympic star that she is onto the stage about 30 minutes before the event ended and done her keynote speech. And I just was like, wow. And I have followed her throughout her career. I just think she's very resilient. She, is speaks her truth. She's very humble in what she does. And yeah, I think she's another great leader who's inspired me, maybe not in the work environment. So, Paul, have you anybody either in work or out of work that you have looked up to or think's a great leader?
Um, in my work life, probably I think that there's a few that you pick up from different bosses I've had over the years. Some that maybe, like you said, made you feel 10 foot tall by believing in you, and
Mm-hmm.
others have maybe stepped in when there was a bit of flack on me, and he took the
Yeah,
flack off me. So it's things like that really that I've just maybe not thought of one particular person, but take the best bits off of the many over the years, so to speak.
yeah. And look, that's what we do. We sort of take, we always remember how people make us feel. It's that famous quote. It's my favorite quote by Maya Angelou. You always forget how people make you think do or what people do, but you will never forget how people make you feel. And I think that's the key when we're looking at this. And I suppose as we start to explore this, these are the key traits of really effective leaders. And I'll just run through these with you just briefly. So these are things that you'll want to think like, look at yourself. Do I display these characteristics, or are there others around me who display these characteristics? So great leaders are usually very self-aware. They understand their strengths, but more importantly, they understand their limitations and their weaknesses. And they also understand how what they do and their values impact others. They're constantly seeking feedback and they reflect on their behavior. Great leaders are usually visionary thinkers, so they articulate a visionary, compelling vision and they inspire others to go with it. And that helps them focus on the big picture while navigating the day-to-day tasks. Great leaders have a lot of integrity, so they lead by example. They lead with honesty, transparency, and they live in a very ethical way. So they build trust by doing what they say they will, basically. They can be empathetic, so they consider other people's perspectives and feelings, and they understand how to build strong relations around them about trust and care. They make decisive, confident decisions. So even under pressure or under uncertainty, they balance logic with intuition and team input, and they make decisions in a timely, confident manner. They can be adaptable, so they embrace change and they remain flexible, so they can shift through circumstances because we always know that things will be changing in our environments. So they're able to navigate these setbacks and challenges with resilience. And then accountability, so they take ownership for their own outcomes and they encourage others to do the same. So that's a sign of a great leader when they have that sort of accountability, responsibility aspect. They're great communicators, so they can communicate clearly, openly, and consistently. And more importantly, they listen. I think with communication, the other side of that is listening. So they're able to listen and adapt their communication style to the audience that they're speaking to. They're always involved in coaching and development, so they invest their time in helping others around them grow and reach your full attention, and also they're inspirational. So they're people who are full of optimism, purpose, passion, and they celebrate success. So what we're going to do today is we're going to explore basically the transition from leadership into management, and we're also going to look at the difference between leadership and management. Both terms are usually used together or interchangeably, but they represent really distinct roles with distinct focuses and distinct approaches. So the reality is that many of you may be operating both as a leader and a manager within your organization. I know that that's been the case throughout my entire career. You may be trying to lead on certain projects, but you're also managing as you go and ensuring things are done. And I suppose as leaders, what we need to think about is how do we spend our time? You are all leaders within your organization. So it's important that you think about, am I spending my time in the way that's making the biggest impact and where I should be spending my time to move the organization forward? So I'm going to go through the different elements of leadership and management, and I'm going to explain each of them. And I want you to think about, how do you spend most of your time whenever I'm talking about each of these different examples? So the first one is focus on vision or focus on execution. So leaders inspire and set the vision for their company, their department, their team. They focus on long-term goals and they guide their team towards achieving that vision, that company vision. They foster innovation and change. Leaders are really concerned with why something should be done. Whereas a manager, they ensure that that vision is executed. So managers, they focus more on the day-to-day operations and they make sure that tasks are completed efficiently and effectively. So managers are more concerned with how things get done, whereas leaders are more about the why something should be done. So while I'm reading these and while I go through each of these different examples, just give yourself a score out of 100%. What percentage of your time do you think you spend on vision? What percentage of your time do you spend on execution? So the second aspect of leadership and management is inspiration versus control. So leaders often use inspiration to influence and motivate their teams. So they will lead by example and others will follow because they trust them, they trust the vision, and because the leader is enthusiastic about the road that they're going on. Whereas managers, they use control and delegation to ensure tasks are complete. So their role is more structured, more focused on enforcing rules, managing the resources, and ensuring compliance. So where would you sit in terms of inspiration versus control? Then we have change versus stability. So leaders are often agents of change. They push their teams to adapt and innovate, and they improve, and they foster that culture of continuous improvement. Whereas managers, they maintain stability and consistency. Their role is to ensure that processes and systems are followed and to keep everything running smoothly. So where would you sit in terms of change versus stability? Are you agents of change or are you trying to maintain stability and consistency? The next area we'll look at is risk-taking versus risk management. So leaders are more likely to take risks. They would push boundaries and they would explore new opportunities, even if there is uncertainty involved. Whereas managers are generally more focused on managing risks. So they will work within established guidelines and they will mitigate potential issues and they will ensure that the operations are running smoothly. So where would you sit in terms of risk-taking versus risk management? And then we have people versus process. So leaders focus more on people. They work to develop and nurture talent, and they develop those strong relationships, and they empower their teams to grow personally and professionally. Whereas managers tend to focus on processes. So their goal is to ensure systems and procedures are followed, and optimized for the efficiency of the team or the organization. So where would you sit in terms of your focus on people or your focus on processes? And then long-term versus short-term focus. So leaders are often forward-thinking. They focus on the long-term goals and strategies, and they often look years ahead to guide the direction of the team or the organization. Whereas managers often focus on short-term goals, so they're more concerned with meeting the deadlines, achieving the quarterly targets, and managing immediate priorities. So leaders are more forward-thinking, whereas managers are more focused on short-term goals and ensuring that, things are done. The next area is empowerment versus authority. So leaders often seek to empower others. So they give them autonomy and they foster that sense of ownership and responsibility. Whereas managers, they exercise authority. So they make decisions about what tasks are assigned, who is responsible for what, and how work should be completed. So where would you sit? What percentage of your time would you use empowerment versus exercising your authority? And the final area that we'll look at in terms of leadership and management is emotional intelligence versus technical skills. So emotional intelligence is a core strength of leaders, and skilled leaders are really good at this. So they understand emotions, they understand their own emotions, and they understand the emotions of others. And they use this to build strong relationships and inspire their teams. Managers, they typically rely on their technical skills and their knowledge to guide the teams. So they focus more on the practicalities of how tasks should be accomplished. So that's the difference there. So where would you be in terms of, your emotional intelligence versus your technical skills? And you may see whenever you go down that list that I've just went through with you, you may spend, 60% of your time on something, 40% of your time then on the management area of that type of skill. And then it may be reversed for, one of the other skills that we have went through. And really, in essence, whenever we're looking at this, you will sort of spend time in both. All leaders, all managers do that. And it's just what percentage of your time do you spend managing and what percentage of your time do you spend leading? So have a think about that and write down your answers, and we'll maybe just see if, a couple would like to share. And I suppose it's that whole saying of working in the business as opposed to working on the business. And we all know that one. We always said, okay, leaders, they need to maybe spend more time working on the business rather than in the business. So just think about that. How much of your time do you spend managing and how much of your time do you spend leading? And a lot of this will depend on the business. It will depend on your role within the business. It will depend on how fast-paced your business is. It will depend on how new the business is. For example, for me, being a new business over this last while, I've been leading and managing and everything, and now I'm building a team. So I'm trying to maybe spend a little bit more time on the business rather than in the business, but it's a small team, so I'm very much doing both. And it's just trying to get that balance. And I think as leaders, that's something we all have to look at from time to time and look at, see, well, where are we spending our time? Are we spending our time in the most effective way? So Aled, I'm going to come to you if you don't mind sharing. In terms of yourself, Aled, what percentage of time do you think you spend managing as opposed to what percentage of your time do you spend leading?
Managing against leading. I'd say leading about 20%.
Okay.
Whereas managing about 80%. And that's
Okay.
because a lot of my tasks, they need to be done immediately, change a program, exactly. I got to get that done all the time. So the leading, it's a sort of longer term. I'm looking at strategies longer term rather than immediately. So I'm having to put most of my time into immediate management.
Getting things done, which is really important, absolutely. And I suppose, Sinead, I know you're new to the team, but I haven't asked you, so I'll come to you. In terms of you, Sinead, what would you think your split is? And I know you're only, not that long in, but at the moment, would you say how are you spending your time? You're on mute, Sinead. Sorry, you just hit the mute button. I can't hear you.
Sorry, I've had a hectic morning, everybody. I'm a bit frazzled. Um, it it's hard to tell how much time I'm spending on each. As you said, Myra, it's a very small team, and I'm still trying to find my feet. But I try generally in teams that I've had before. I've always give people the authority to go and work on their own, and give them that power. I don't like managing. I don't like micromanaging. Let's put it that way. I would rather let people find their feet, give them some direction, and that's what I'll try and do with Become More as well. But sometimes you have to manage, so it's probably a 50-50.
Yeah, yeah. And that's what we're doing today. It's just thinking and reflecting, how do we spend our time, and are we spending our time doing the right things? And I suppose this here is, very important. So both are critical for the success of any organization. And in many cases, we will have to embody both aspects. But it's really important just to step back sometimes and think, how do I spend my time? Is it the most effective use of my time for the company that I'm working in and for the role that I have in the company? And whenever you are sort of thinking about, spending more time in leadership as opposed to management, there's a few shifts in mindset that are important. And these are the shifts. So, whenever you are moving more from doing more leadership in as opposed to management, you go from doing to leading. So you're actually not doing all the work, you're empowering others to do it, and then you're leading them to actually carry out those tasks. You go from control to trust. So you actually, I suppose, as you were saying there, Sinead, you trust others to actually do the tasks that you assign them. And then you go from task focus to people focus. So it's more about the people. You put in the processes and systems, and you know that they're going to be continually improved. But then you focus on the people to enable them and empower them to actually carry out the tasks. And I suppose the last one is the one that is, I suppose, the most important. And look, yous have all been in the companies for a long time, so yous probably have got this respect. So it's from being liked to being respected. And sometimes that can be a challenge if you are promoting people within your teams from a manager role, maybe into more of a leadership role, or even maybe from, a site manager or somebody that's been working in the team to more of a site manager or, a leader role. Whenever they move up and whenever people move up through an organization, this can be a tricky dynamic to navigate because they're part of the team and then they're going to have to manage that team or lead that team. And sometimes, it's that thing about, the most important thing is that they've got respect from the people that they're leading and managing. And it's not so much about being liked, it's about having that respect. Because once you have that respect, that trust, then people will, follow. And, whenever you ask them to do something and you explain the reasons why, then they will go forward and deliver. So there's a number of different leadership styles, and I want you to, we're going to explore these leadership styles. And as I do, I want you again to think about, what is your prominent leadership style? Think about, which do you use most often, and which of these leadership styles reflect you most. So the first leadership style is directive leadership. So this is also known as authoritative leadership or commanding leadership. And this is whenever a leader makes decisions quickly and expects others to follow their instructions with little input, really. And this style is focused more on control, structure, and efficiency. And it's best used when there's limited time and whenever you need quick decisions, or whenever the team is inexperienced or the team's new. It can be used in crisis situations. So, for example, during the pandemic, lots of leaders became more directive in their leadership. Or whenever there's high stake scenarios. So maybe if there's like a health and safety issue or crisis or something's happened in that area, you're going to have to be more directive as a leader. But creativity can be stifled if you use this type of leadership too often or if it's used inappropriately. And it can reduce morale if it's used too much. So the second style of leadership is coaching leadership. So this is also known as developmental leadership. And this is whenever the leader supports and guides a team to build their strengths and confidence. And it's focused more on growth, feedback, and long-term development. So this is best used when your team is very motivated, but they need a bit of guidance. It's whenever you're trying to develop talent for future leadership. And it's also whenever you have the luxury of time to invest in this type of training and learning. So this type of leading takes time and patience, and it may not work in a fast-paced environment with high pressures or demands or lots of deadlines. So yeah, that's coaching leadership. The next style of leadership then is democratic leadership. So this is also known as participative leadership. So this is where a leader encourages or collaborates or seeks collaboration and input from the team before they make decisions. So this type of leadership encourages ownership, engagement, and innovation. And it's best used whenever you want to get trust and buy-in from your team. Also, whenever you maybe have complex problems or you require diverse input from others, or whenever your team members are experienced and confident. But this type of leadership can slow down decision making and it can create confusion if not well facilitated. So it's like that saying, and too many cooks spoil the broth. It needs structure and it needs strong communication. And then the final type of leadership is delegative leadership. So this is also known as like laissez-faire leadership. So this is where the leader provides minimal direction and gives members full autonomy to make decisions and complete tasks. So this is best used whenever you've got a highly skilled and self-motivated team, whenever creativity and independent thinking are important, or whenever you want to empower ownership to the team. So a bit of caution with this type of leadership, it can lead to lack of direction or accountability if the team roles aren't clear or if the team aren't ready. So this needs to be a very experienced team who know what they're doing, and you basically give them a task and let them go off and deliver it. But if they're not ready, if they're not experienced enough, or their roles aren't clear as to who's doing what, then that can be something that can come back to bite. So I just want us to discuss this, and I want you to think, and we'll just do it within the group. So I'll take a few moments. So take 2 or 3 moments just to answer these questions and reflect on these. Which leadership style resonates with you most? What style would your team say you use most? Would you like to grow or adapt into any of the other leadership styles? And I suppose the final question is, what are your biggest challenges at the moment to managing or leading your team? And can you think of any strategies that you could use to manage your team more effectively? So I'll give you about 5 minutes just to think about those questions and reflect on those questions, and then we'll share just with each other just anything that come out. Okay, so hopefully you've had a few moments to think about these questions, and I'm just going to see if any of you'd like to share with us on any of these. So I'm going to ask Paul. Would you mind, Paul, just sharing? You can answer any of the questions on screen. Maybe, you know, which leadership style resonates with you most, or what style would your team say you use most? Are they the same?
Hopefully, because we've only got a small team and they're quite young at the moment, so I'd hopefully it'd be the coaching style,
Yeah,
trying to explain, get like the views across of why they're doing things and to make sure that they are doing it. And if they want to ask questions, they obviously can come back. But obviously, it's just that's the. I would hopefully they say the same. Um,
yeah,
and maybe a little bit of the maybe the democratic one, because when you give them a little task, I don't want to be on top of them too much. But
yeah.
so maybe a bit of freedom, but sometimes you find out you have to be tough to make sure. But yeah, I think that'd be the way at the moment anyway.
And you know, with a new team, that's brilliant that you're, you know, you are coaching them, you're bringing them forward, you're trying to give them projects. And whenever you do empower, you know, others to go away, complete a project, you'll soon see the ones that are stepping up and showing that, you know, ability to, you know, take things on, which I think is always great. And then
Yeah,
sometimes it actually highlights those that maybe you thought were capable of doing certain things and maybe didn't deliver. I've
that's
had
it.
that in the past as well. You know, but that's all learning, and maybe it's more support that's required, or maybe a misunderstanding of what they had to do,
Yeah,
and you know, maybe the more
exactly.
direction from our
That's
point as well. So we need to look at how we delivered that. But
that's
thank
it.
you. Is there any challenges you're having at the moment in terms of managing, or any strategies that you're using to manage your team effectively, Paul?
Um, the thing I can think of really is just like you're saying, just ensuring that if the work gets done. Really, that's all at the moment. Nothing
Yeah,
that jumps out, to be honest. Yeah.
brilliant. Thank you. Aled, we'll come to you if you don't mind. Which of the leadership styles resonates with you the most?
I think it could be a combination of two, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
So directive leadership,
yeah,
where we've got control processes in place, ensuring everybody follows them.
yes,
And then the sort of democratic leadership, where before making changes, agreeing with a team that would be
yeah,
responsible for them changes. So it's a combination of both, but still trying to keep control of what's going on as a
yeah,
leader, and yeah, trying to get an input from everybody to agree on a principle really, and
yeah.
and a way forward.
And those two are great whenever they go together, because you're actually empowering people, but you're also then making sure that
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
getting done and that things are
yeah, yeah,
moving forward. And that's very important, I suppose, whenever there's lots of projects going on and you're delivering for, you know, clients and different aspects of the different projects you're working on. And in terms of, I suppose, the question around, are you having any challenges, or what are the biggest challenges, and what strategies have you used over the years to manage that?
yeah. We have challenges daily. I think Paul would agree with that as well. Yeah, so one of the biggest challenges we have if we want to change something, if we want
Yeah,
to decide we need to change a process, be more efficient. It's difficult. People don't like change. So
yes,
what we try and do, it's using a democratic leadership. We'd agree with sort of heads of departments first. This is the way
yep.
forward with the client. This is what we need to do. Then I bring the engineers or managers in, and we'll have a discussion with them. And from there on, we then bring the supervisors and employees on. So the biggest challenge is always change.
Yeah, and I suppose it's that curve, isn't it? That law of diffusion. Whenever you
Yeah,
get the early adopters on board, you know, the managers believe and see the reasons for the change, then you can get others to get on board with it. So it's stripping that through and then getting everybody on board.
yeah.
But change, yeah, change can be a difficult one to manage, definitely. Brilliant. And Catherine, what about yourself then, in terms of, you know, what would be your leadership style? What would resonate with you most?
Probably the democratic one, Myra.
Yeah,
Um, my style is probably kind of bringing everybody in together and sort of agreeing things as a team, albeit perhaps, you know, with me having, you know, I sort of like to bring the people along with me. So it's probably that. Um,
yeah,
yeah, probably. And
Does
I
that
would
ever
say,
cause you any challenges, Catherine, in terms of like the speed at which you need to make them, or usually
yeah,
are you able to sort of you just take the lead anyway then once you've brought them together and listened?
no, I do think in the past sometimes I have been too kind of like that softly approach really, and kind of trying to bring the people along. Whereas one of my colleagues, and I can think of even just one example of uh, a a member of staff who I was trying to get to do something. Basically, it was sort of a bit of a change in job role, and I was going very softly about it, and it just was not working. He was refusing to do it, and then funny, one of my colleagues, he's much more direct, and it was just like, this is the way it's happening and that's it. And it was sort of like, and I was sitting there at the table, and I remember the employee, he was like, all right, that's no problem. And I thought, I've been trying to get you to do this for months and months, but my approach was obviously too soft, too nice, I don't know. So I've kind of seen and I remember that one really clearly. And funny, and there was somebody else thinking there with them. We would often almost laugh at that. But do you remember that time? We were trying to get such and such to do this for months and months, and literally it was like over and done with in about 2 seconds with one of my other directors that had got involved. So that was a good lesson for me too, to be honest with you. That there's certain scenarios where you have to be, and it depends who the person is as well. Some people just
Yeah.
respond better to, this is what's happening, and then there's other people that do respond better to you taking them along with you. So it's probably knowing your audience a wee bit.
Yeah, that's the point I was going to make, Catherine. Sometimes people react differently to different types of
Yeah,
leadership,
and you
and
sort
it's
of know the
sometimes
person. Yeah.
yeah, knowing who it is you're dealing with, because in the whole, people do like to be brought into decisions, especially if they're big decisions that's going to affect them. They like to
Yeah.
feel, okay, they're asking me about this or they're involving me.
Yeah.
And then some people, like no matter how much you ask, or they'll not do it until you say, Rick, this
Yeah.
needs to be done, and this by
Yeah.
this date, and this is
Yeah.
how you're going to be measured,
Yeah.
and this is what I expect.
Yeah.
And that person obviously responded better to that type of
Yeah.
leadership, and we're able to go, okay, then I'll pull up my socks and I'll get this done. And it is sometimes just about knowing your audience, and you can try one style of leadership, and then you may have to change, because if somebody's not responding well to that, like you had experienced in that situation, then a different approach may be necessary. So no, I
Yeah.
love that example, Catherine. Thank you for sharing. So I suppose when we're looking at this today, it's really about looking at best practice and sort of thinking about like, how do we overcome leadership challenges, and what strategies do we have for really getting everybody to do what it is we need them to do. And there's a few things, whenever we are asking people to do things, that there may be resistance. And I'll go through a few of these now with you in terms of, how do we deal with common challenges and strategies for overcoming people not doing what we want them to do. And look, sometimes it's to do with communication. Communication can break down because we all have different communication styles. But if there's unclear expectations about what somebody wants, or miscommunication can lead to misunderstandings, mistakes, or conflicts. So if you are trying to, bring people along and lead them in a certain way, resolve any communication issues by ensuring that there is consistent communication methods in place, so that you do have those regular team meetings, those emails, or even, have a team chat. Like, a lot of people now use the Teams chat function with their teams. And also then recognize that people prefer different ways of communicating. So in Catherine's example there, look, some people like a more direct approach, whereas other people like to have more involvement. And make sure that always roles, tasks, and deadlines are clearly communicated and understood by all team members, and then check in with them to ensure that they understand and ensure alignment. As well as that, you'll all probably having to manage people with different diverse work styles. So people like to approach completing tasks in different ways, with different paces. So some people can get stuff done in half the time than others. So, it's about sort of being aware of that. So some people like to work independently, while others really thrive in a collaborative environment. So if you do have that, again, it's about knowing your team. Try and put team members in ways that work to their strengths. So if people really like to work independently and others then like to work in groups, try and accommodate that if you can for projects. Focus on outcomes rather than micromanaging individual processes. And then foster collaboration by pairing team members with complementary skills. So if somebody isn't as good or strong in an area, then you can put them together with somebody else who is very strong. And I suppose in terms of Paul, the new team, it's maybe thinking about how can you put that person with somebody more experienced so they can learn from them. If you do have conflicts and disagreements, which happens in every team, especially if you're dealing like you guys are with tight deadlines, high stress, or differing opinions, the solution to that is really address those conflicts early. So don't wait for them to escalate. Facilitate open, honest communication between those conflicting parties and encourage them to express their concerns in a constructive way. That's the key. As a leader then, practice listening. So try and get to the root cause of the conflict, and then try and, be empathetic and listen to both parties, make them feel heard, and then shift the focus from blame to finding a solution. So whenever something does happen, always focus, well, what is the solution? Focus on the solution. What good can come out of this, or how can we deal with this in a constructive way? And if you do that, then it helps you find that common ground for purpose and a way to move forward. And then motivating the team. So a challenge to leadership can be keeping your team motivated and engaged, especially whenever you've got a difficult project that you're trying to deliver, or if there's really tight deadlines. So if you are trying to keep your team motivated, regularly acknowledge team and individual achievements. So it may be just, thank you, or maybe personal acknowledgement to say, look, I recognized you did this, and I really just want to say, I really appreciate it. And then provide growth opportunities. So if there is any opportunities for coaching somebody or mentoring somebody, or maybe even somebody taking on additional responsibility, that really helps keep people engaged and motivated. And then if you provide that like inclusive environment where your team members feel valued and appreciated, it can help. And also that work-life balance, ensuring everybody has a good work-life balance and they're not overworked as well. And then delegation and trust. So this is often an area I find that some leaders struggle with, which is delegating tasks, because sometimes it's the fear of losing control or even doubting that your team members are capable to take on some of the roles that you do. So if you are wanting to delegate and lead by delegating to others, then certain things that you would do is clearly give them instructions and provide all the necessary resources that they need to complete the task. And then trust your team members without micromanaging them. Offer that support. So when you give something to somebody, just say, look, I'm here if you need me. But empower them to take ownership and responsibility. And then cultivate your leadership skills by providing ways that you can maybe lead others or mentor others, and that will build trust and encourage independence. Some challenges that many of you maybe have experienced throughout your life, and I have in managing large teams, is underperformance. So sometimes team members are not performing as they should be, or not meeting your expectations. And this affects overall team productivity, because if somebody sees that somebody else is not pulling their weight, or they're not doing what they need to be doing, or they're not giving their all, then that does affect everybody in the team. So if you do have underperforming in your team, you need to give clear, actionable feedback to those people, but you focus on the behaviours, not the person. You focus on the performance rather than making it personal criticism. So you can work with that underperforming team member and then create some kind of performance improvement plan. So, address it. Say, look, we're going to set clear goals here, clear timelines and support mechanisms to try and get you back on track to where we need you to be performing. And sometimes underperformance stems from lack of confidence or maybe lack of skills. So it may be that they need a bit more coaching. It may be that they need additional training. It may be that they need mentorship from somebody else in the team to improve that employee. And then have that shared purpose with the individual to help them perform. And then check back in. Say, look, we're going to review this 6 weeks time, 3 months time, and keep that sort of monitoring going until that person is up to scratch again. A challenge as well is managing teams in a hybrid environment or a remote environment. I'm not sure if many of you have to do this now because you're in construction, but if there are remote members of the team, just use technology for collaboration. You can have virtual team building, and set clear expectations from remote work. And then I suppose we've focused on this in a few of our other sessions, but time management and prioritization. So with multiple deadlines, projects, sometimes teams struggle to prioritize their tasks effectively and manage their time. So for you guys, you can use tools like the Eisenhower matrix or time blocking techniques. So you can, reflect this back to your teams as well to help them prioritize key tasks and urgency and importance. And then break down big, large projects into smaller achievable tasks with clear deadlines for each phase of the project. And also then take priority on those high tasks that really require your focus. And then that will help you to have that high impact work. So really it's about taking that proactive approach whenever you are leading and managing, and having good communication, conflict resolution, motivation and delegation. And if anything does come up, like underperformance, or if there is challenges, then address them early, and then that will help you to move forward in a positive way. And you can provide regular feedback, clear goals, and a culture then that really enables people to grow and thrive. So I'm going to finish the session today with a summary from this book. Have any of you read this book, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie? No? Don't think anybody's read it. It's a great book. I would recommend it. Have you read it, Sinead?
I'm about halfway through it, and it's not a big book, so it will not take me long to finish it.
It's not long. Are you enjoying it?
I am actually, because I am enjoying it because it's not long. I like things that are short and to the point. Yeah.
Yeah, me too, actually. And, it's a really good book. It's really good for many different aspects. It's good for your personal life and your professional life. And it's one of the most actually influential self-help books ever written. It was written in 1936, and it offers ways to improve social interactions, build better relationships, and positively influence others, both personally and professionally. So I'm going to share this video. Now, a word of warning, the guy in the video has a very strong Australian accent. And he makes me giggle some of the ways he describes things. But I do like it because I think he gets a lot of the points across in a really good way. Some of the names he uses are very Australian, and some of the examples he gives are quite extreme. But the points in his summary of this book, I think, are great. So yeah, let's watch this. And as we're playing it, just make a few notes of anything that stands out for you, and then we'll summarize it at the end. So hopefully this plays without any adverts, because the adverts have been coming on for me a little bit lately. If there is, I apologize in advance. Oh, we've got ads. Apologies. They'll be very quick. They'll be very quick. Yeah, I don't know what this is. Oh, this is about TikTok for business. And there'll be another short one. I think the next one will be 15 seconds, and then we'll put into the video. So yeah, I'm really short one. This will be over in a second. Okay, there we go. So this is the video. 1% better.
Lesson 1. You can't win an argument. Dale has been involved in and observed thousands of arguments. He came to the conclusion that to get the best of an argument, avoid it altogether. 9 times out of 10, an argument ends with each person being more convinced that they're absolutely right. Even if you win an argument, you lose. Why? Well, because you've made the other person feel inferior and hurt their sense of pride. Ask yourself, is it really worth your time and energy trying to win an argument when it will give you nothing but a temporary sense of victory in exchange for making the other person feel like crap? Lesson 2. Never tell a man he is wrong. Wayne is a wood chopper. Carl is a builder. Wayne specializes in oak wood and Carl in pine wood. One day, Carl ordered some oak wood from Wayne. Upon inspecting the oak wood, Carl was frustrated with its poor quality and wasn't willing to pay for it. But Wayne noticed his quality inspection was too strict and was misinterpreting how to assess the quality of oak wood. He knew Carl was wrong. Now most people would be tempted to say, "Carl mate, you're bloody wrong." But not Wayne. Instead, he began asking questions as to why the oak wood was not of high quality. He emphasized that he was only asking so that he could give Carl exactly what he wanted for future orders. He approached the situation in a friendly and cooperative manner. Eventually, Carl's attitude changed. He soon admitted he was not experienced with oak wood and began asking Wayne questions. He finally understood that it was his fault for making poor judgments about the quality of the wood. Carl ended up happily paying for the wood. Now that's the power of never telling someone they're wrong. Feel free to try this out in your own life. I'm confident you'll notice that people respond much more positively to you when you don't tell them they're wrong. Lesson 3. Ask questions instead of giving orders. It makes people want to cooperate with you. If you want your roommate to help you do the dishes, you'll likely get a more positive response if you say, "Hey Clarence, could you please give me a hand with the dishes?" instead of, "Hey Clarence, do the dishes with me now." Framing your request as a question rather than a demand makes Clarence feel like he has a choice and therefore will be more responsive to your requests. Lesson 4. Remember names. Andrew Carnegie, one of the richest men in history, understood the importance of names. As a child, he had a nest of pet rabbits but no food to feed them. He told the boys in the neighborhood that if they would go out and get enough dandelions to feed the rabbits, he would name the bunnies in their honor. The plan worked. He used the same principle in business. A man named Pullman and himself were fighting against each other, trying to get the sleeping car business to work. During a meeting one evening, Andrew suggested that they merge companies and work together. Pullman listened intently and then asked, "What would you call the new company?" Andrew responded, "Why, the Pullman Palace Car Company, of course." Pullman's face brightened and he said, "Come into my room, let's talk it over." When I first met Amy, she told me her name, but I didn't hear her properly. I asked her to say it again, and even a third time during class. The longer you leave it, the more awkward it becomes. You might feel embarrassed about asking more than once, but realize that people appreciate it when you take the time to learn their name. I remember randomly talking to a man in my class named Tom. Next week, I came in and I said, "Hey Tom, how you doing?" And he said, "Wow, I'm surprised you remembered my name." And now for the final lesson. Talk in terms of others' interests. If there was just one lesson you could take away from this book, this would be it. I really struggle to talk to new people. It doesn't matter if we have nothing in common because I talk about their interests. In one of my first conversations with Amy, I asked her a simple question. "What do you like to do in your spare time?" She said, "I listen to music, randomly sing and dance, draw, do artsy stuff, try and keep fit, watch movies and funny TV shows, I read, I cook, I play with my pets, and spend time with my family and friends." I followed her up with another simple question. "Okay, so what do you read and what do you draw?" Amy got excited. After a long outburst of sharing her interests, she said, "I'm getting way too excited talking about this. No one ever gets to know me this way, so I have this all bottled up. It's so awesome talking about my passions, so thanks for listening to me." We get along so well now and have been great friends since. It doesn't matter whether you're talking to your boss, workmates, teachers, friends, family, or strangers. Talk in terms of other people's interests and they'll love you for it. Okay, now let's summarize.
Okay, so the principles in that book are timeless because they're focused on fundamental human psychology. And I suppose these are the key takeaways. Become genuinely interested in other people. And whenever I was listening to that, I always laugh at the number of hobbies Amy has. I was thinking, wow. But anyway, so be genuinely interested in other people. If you do, that will build a connection. Smile, a genuine smile opens doors and hearts. Remember names. That's always something that's really important. If you can remember somebody's name, it means a lot to them. Be a good listener. So encourage others to talk about themselves and then talk in terms of other people's interests. So if you ever are at, an event or you're struggling for something to say to somebody, if you ask them about what are their interests, then that helps. And make the other person feel important and do it sincerely because that authenticity builds loyalty and it helps with connection. So that is really us finished for today. I do have a couple of actions. Usually I don't give them out in the mastermind sessions, but if you do want to take away a couple of things from this session, it would be think about how much time you spend leading or managing, and then, you know, think and be deliberate about how much time you spend in both. And then you can take one takeaway from how to win friends and influence people and try and accommodate that into your leadership style. So hopefully you've enjoyed that session today. We will follow up with a summary just with the takeaways from this, and I will stop recording.